I trust everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We're kind of picking up right where we left off in the last devotional. Last devotional, we are all decked out and ready to go for Thanksgiving. It was on Thanksgiving Day, but now today, here we are ready to go for Christmas. The house is decorated and we're moving forward. But I don't want to move forward too fast. I want to talk about Thanksgiving one more time, because here's the thing. Thanksgiving is so essential to what we experience in life. And I know that this year for us, we had an abundance of Thanksgiving moments. In fact, we had an abundance of Thanksgiving meals. You see, it all started a couple weeks before Thanksgiving when we went and we visited Melanie's mom and dad, and we had a Thanksgiving meal then. And then on Thanksgiving Day, we were able to have 2 Thanksgiving meals. We had lunch with my dad, and then we had dinner with Martin to celebrate Thanksgiving evening. It was a couple weeks just full of Thanksgiving moments. But you know, in the midst of all this Thanksgiving, I had been reading some devotionals which were often focused on that idea of giving thanks, but they were also focused on these things that might stand in the way. You see, Thanksgiving is a time where we throw open that door and we talk about Thanksgiving so much that it's right there before us. But there are other things that can happen to us that can begin to close those doors. And I was reading those devotionals, and there were 2 aspects that they talked about that I know, at least for me, really does get in my way. The first one is this idea of entitlement. You know, this idea that, you know, I work hard, I really dedicate myself to making sure my family is cared for and all those things. And so because of all of that, I feel like I'm entitled to having a beautiful house, a wonderful car, a great place to work. And you know what happens when I feel entitled? I don't feel blessed anymore. If I am entitled to all the blessings that I get, then why would I be grateful for them? It's what I deserve. And I think sometimes that can get in the way of our ability to give thanks. I deserve it, so why should I say thanks? But the second thing that really stood out to me was something I hadn't thought about before, but I think is really true. And this one came from a devotional I was reading by a woman named Christy Nelson. Christy Nelson was a cancer survivor, and during those period of times when cancer was really just taking her out, she found herself needing to focus on this idea that every day that she got was a gift. And when life wasn't sure if it was going to continue the next day, she found herself being able to give thanks for each and every day God had given her. But here's the thing. As she moved past that and as her health began to improve, she began to forget about that. And she became what she called gratitude immune. Let me tell you what she said. I love this. I thought it was right on with what many of us may experience. She said, over time, all those amazing reasons to feel gratitude joined the ranks of the taken for granted. I got healthy, and then I got busy. I began chasing goals and the fulfillment of those promises. I martyred myself to a job, complained about things like traffic, my weight, colds. I ruthlessly compared myself to others, succumbing to retail therapy and debt, and suffering from stress. Each year that passed, I built up kind of a gratitude tolerance. What used to be enough got left in the dust in the pursuit of having more. Having cheated death, I began to cheat life. I thought that was a really interesting line. This woman who had cheated death and was so grateful for it, because gratitude began to wane and she began to get so used to all the blessings she had, she kind of became intolerant to all of those wonderful things that she had been given, and she started taking life for granted again. Having cheated death, I began to cheat life. That's a powerful line. And I think sometimes that's what gets in the way of our ability to give thanks. You know, I was reading recently that in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul wrote more than 46 times on the need to be thankful and this idea of gratitude. One of those places in Galatians chapter 2, beginning at verse 6, he says this, he goes, "As you therefore have received Christ Jesus the Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving." You see, for Paul, it was that last part, abounding in thanksgiving, that made all those other things really pop for him. This idea of having received Jesus, continuing to live these lives in him, rooted and grounded in him, brought Paul to a sense of thanksgiving that he just could not describe enough. You know, the thing is, when you think about Paul and you realize that part of the thing that Paul dealt with was that these other things in life, this idea of entitlement, never got in the way for Paul because he felt so untitled to what he was been given. You see, Paul oftentimes calls himself the least of the apostles because he flat out could not understand how Jesus would come to him even though he was persecuting the very church that Jesus began. And because of that, because he felt so unentitled to all the blessings he was given, that thanksgiving began to well up inside of him. And if we can't understand the blessings of God and how blessed we are because we don't necessarily deserve all these wonderful gifts that God has given us, this faith that we live will become meaningless. The meaning of this faith for Paul was expressed in his gratitude. And I think sometimes that's what gets in the way of our having vital and alive faith like Paul had. So, Thanksgiving is behind us. Christmas is before us. But we can't let that thread of Thanksgiving to wane at the end of that day we celebrate as Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving and giving thanks to God for the many blessings that we do not deserve, but God pours down upon us anyway, that is the key to having an alive faith. So may God continue to bless you this holiday season. And don't forget, the blessings that you have been given by God are ones that he gives you simply because he loves you more than you can ever imagine. Thanks be to God.